Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're looking today at something truly chilling, the recent Air India AI171 crash. I mean, picture this. A plane takes off, it's in the air for maybe half a minute, and then it falls. It's just unthinkable. So our mission today is to really unpack what happened there, but also, and this is crucial, connect it to the bigger picture. We're talking manufacturing quality, oversight, particularly involving, a major player, Boeing.
Right, and what's really striking is how this one absolutely tragic event, AI171, it forces us to look much harder at these systemic problems that are now, frankly, under a global microscope. Our sources really dig into the AI171 specifics, yes, but also this wider pattern of incidents and, well, serious allegations about Boeing's production.
Okay, so let's start with those first few moments. Flight AI171, it was a Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner registration VTANB, left Ahmedabad, India about 1:38 p.m. local time, heading for London Gatwick. It gets up to, around 625 feet, barely anything, and then a really fast descent, like 475 feet per minute. It crashed into a medical college hostel right there in Ahmedabad. We're talking maybe 30 seconds total borne time, just staggering.
And the human cost, it's just devastating. You had 242 people on board, 230 passengers, 12 crew. 241 lost their lives. Just one survivor from the plane itself, Ramesh Vishwash Kumar. Incredibly. But the tragedy extends to the ground, too. That hostel building, part of it destroyed. 34 people killed on the ground, residents, students, over 60 injured. The impact was just immense.
And the crew. The captain, Sumit Sabharwal, pretty experienced, around 8:3200 hours. First officer Clive Kundar, about 1100. The plane itself first flew late 2013, delivered early 2014, so not ancient by any means. Maintenance history looked clean on paper. One engine was brand new, installed March 2025. The other serviced back in 2023.
Seems okay on the surface.
Right. But then, immediately after takeoff, the crew sends a mayday. They report loss of power and thrust. And then the RAT deploys the ram air turbine.
Okay, so the RAT deploying, that's significant. It's basically a small emergency generator. It pops out. If you lose main engines or major hydraulic systems, it's a clear sign something went very, very wrong very quickly. Could be dual engine failure, massive hydraulic loss.
Initial thoughts, maybe bird strikes, some kind of technical fault, but the weather apparently was fine, normal conditions.
So the investigation kicked off fast. They recovered both black boxes, the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder, pretty quickly. Plus, there was external camera footage, all absolutely vital now for the investigation. India's AIB, the Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau, they're leading the probe. But they've got help, technical assistance from the UK AAIB, the US NTSB, and obviously Boeing and GE Aerospace are involved too. It's a big international effort.
Yeah, and it's not just about this one crash, right? India's Aviation Authority, the DGCA, they've launched a wider probe looking into, what they're calling systemic issues.
Exactly. Things like maintenance procedures, how records are kept, even staffing levels. Are there enough trained people doing the work?
Air India's chairman, N. Chandrasekaran, he's pointed to the plane's service record being clean, but, everyone's waiting on those black boxes.
And India's civil aviation minister confirmed they are keeping the black boxes in India for analysis. They're not sending them overseas initially.
Okay, now let's pivot, because this is where AI171 suddenly slots into a much bigger and frankly more worrying narrative. We have to talk about that Alaska Airlines flight back in January 2024, the 737 MAX 9, where the door plug just blew out midair.
Right. Different plane, the MAX 9 versus the 787 Dreamliner here, but the findings from the NTSB on that Alaska incident, they give us a really crucial window into potential systemic problems at Boeing.
So what did the NTSB find there? That report came out just recently, June 24th, 2025.
Yeah, and it was pretty damning. They confirmed Boeing flat out failed to install 4 key bolts holding that door plug in place during maintenance at their factory. And get this, that panel apparently shifted, moved around, during 154 flights before it finally failed.
154 flights? Wow.
Yeah. And the NTSB pointed to what they termed a hole in training. Most of the workers involved in putting that panel back. Inexperienced, maybe not qualified for that specific job. The one technician who normally did that kind of work, on vacation.
You're kidding.
Nope. And then there was the documentation, or lack thereof, huge gaps. They couldn't even be sure who actually did the work. And Boeing's own safety management system, the SMS, which is supposed to catch this stuff, the NTSB found it wasn't up to scratch. Insufficient.
So what happened after that Alaska report?
Well, the NTSB made 19 safety recommendations aimed at Boeing and the FAA. Things like totally overhauling worker training, getting third parties to review Boeing's safety culture, even redesigning the door plug itself.
Did Boeing respond?
They acknowledged the issues, started working on design changes, and the FAA. They stepped up audits, put a cap on how many new 737 MAX planes Boeing could produce, only 38 a month.
And that's not all, is it? There have been whistleblowers.
That's right. People like John Barnett, sadly now deceased, and Sam Salapore, both former Boeing insiders. And their allegations were specifically about the 787 Dreamliner, the same model as AI171,
What were they saying?
alleging production shortcuts. Things like filling gaps in the fuselage sections with material instead of making the parts fit perfectly from the start. Basically, concerns that speed was being prioritized over precision, and even allegations of falsified documentation to hide these issues.
Good grief. And then there was that FAA audit in March 2024.
Yep, found dozens of procedural problems at Boeing. Plus, there's still an ongoing criminal investigation by the Department of Justice that's linked to deception towards the FAA, way back during the original 737 MAX certification after those first two crashes.
It's just a lot. Led to big leadership changes too, right? CEO Dave Calhoun resigned.
Yeah, huge pressure on Boeing to fundamentally change its safety culture.
Okay, so bringing it back to Air India AI171, how does all this connect?
Well, disturbingly, our sources say a Boeing engineer had already flagged concerns specifically about 787 fuselage assembly, those tiny gaps and potential fatigue issues last year, before AI171 happened.
Wow. So the debate around AI171 now, is it bird strikes causing that dual engine flameout? Or is it something deeper? A mechanical or hydraulic failure may be linked to these production concerns.
That's the core question for investigators. There are other theories, too. Did the landing gear maybe fail to retract properly, causing extra drag? Did that catastrophic power loss just happen, triggering the RAT?
And then there are those unconfirmed reports you mentioned.
Right. These are highly controversial and, let's stress, unconfirmed forensic reports suggesting other factors might be involved in AI171. Things like potentially adulterated fuel, the plane possibly being overweight, or falsified documents related to its departure.
If, and it's a big if any of that turns out to be true.
Yeah. It blows the investigation wide open. It wouldn't just be about potential manufacturing flaws at Boeing's end. It would point towards serious failures in airline operations, ground handling, fuel supply, oversight, right up to the moment of takeoff.
And this all happens against the backdrop of the 737 MX crashes caused by the MCS system flaw.
Exactly. While MCS was specific to the MAX, it cemented this perception, fair or not, that maybe Boeing sometimes pushed production too fast, potentially compromising safety design. It adds to the scrutiny.
So looking at the Alaska door plug incident and now AI171, are we seeing a pattern?
That's the crucial question everyone's asking. The types of failures being discussed omitted parts like bolts, lack of proper training or oversight, poor documentation. These themes, highlighted by the NTSB in the Alaska case, seem to echo in the concerns and allegations surrounding the 787 and potentially the AI-171 crash itself. It's hard to ignore that potential connection.
What's been the fallout since the AI-171 crash?
Well, Air India immediately cut back its long-haul flights, about 15%, and grounded similar 787s for checks. 3 Air India officials were also reportedly dismissed over violations related to crew scheduling and emergency equipment checks, though maybe not directly linked to the crash cause itself.
And pilots?
Across India, definitely increased caution. Reports of pilots grounding flights for even minor technical issues much more readily in the weeks after. Understandable, really.
And the regulator in India, the DGCA, they're under pressure too.
Yes, questions are being raised. Our sources mentioned potential understaffing issues there and the challenge of overseeing a rapidly growing airline fleet in India, particularly with these Boeing aircraft concerns.
And the market reaction?
Pretty immediate. Boeing stock dropped maybe 6–8% right after the crash. We saw orders being paused or questioned at the Paris Air Show shortly after. Investors are clearly nervous.
So when you take a step back from all these details, what does it really mean? For you listening, whether you travel a lot or you're just trying to follow this complex story, I think this deep dive really shows how one single terrible incident can suddenly magnify these much bigger questions about quality, about maintenance, about who's watching the watchers in such a critical industry.
Absolutely. AI-171 isn't happening in a vacuum. It's amplifying all these pre-existing concerns, manufacturing shortcuts, quality control gaps, maintenance issues. This pattern is now under intense global scrutiny. We're basically watching accountability or the demand for it evolve in real time.
So here's something to think about as these investigations go on. We've talked about human factors, company culture, regulations. all these moving parts. What single thing do you think is the most critical element needed to fully restore public confidence in air travel safety?
Yeah.
Something to ponder.